Hey, Greg Getter here, and today I want to talk about this article from McKinsey, which projects when they think life will start to return to normal and when the pandemic will start to peter out. And this is already 2 weeks old. It was published on November 23rd. However, it seems McKinsey has a pace of every 2 months. And this article takes into account the information on vaccines. So it does seem like it is pretty plausible what they are saying here. And this is McKinsey, so at least it's going to be an educated picture of what life is going to look like for the first half of 2021. Now, before we get into the November version of this article, I want to look at the September update because it talks about the 2 ways they defined an endpoint for the pandemic. And the one way is the epidemiological endpoint, which is the point at which herd immunity is achieved. And here they define herd immunity as when a significant proportion of society is immune, such that COVID-19 spread is not going to be widespread anymore. And the second metric for the endpoint is going to be much less technical. It's going to be the point at which society starts to return to normal or something resembling normal. And here they say that the normalcy is mostly going to depend on a bunch of tools like vaccination, accurate testing, better therapeutics, and continuing strengthening of the public health metrics. And that's going to start to transition us back to things that we would consider normal, such as airports, the ability to shop in crowded shops, people working at factories at full capacity, restaurants that are not operating at limited capacity, and gyms that are completely back to normal. So McKinsey is both defining the endpoint of COVID as the point at which we achieve an epidemiological goal such that people are significantly vaccinated and we've achieved herd immunity, but it's also looking at the time when society is going to start returning back to normal. So the rest of this video is going to talk about the November update because it's using some of the most recent information that we have. Right off the bat, McKinsey predicts that we'll reach an epidemiological herd immunity by Q3 or Q4 of 2021. And that is what they had predicted back in September, but if you look at the graphic here, they actually have higher confidence in the prediction being in Q3 or Q4 compared to before, because more is known about the vaccines right now than was known a couple months ago. And to add to that, they think that we're more likely to achieve herd immunity in Q3 than in Q4. Now, if we jump ahead to the end of the November update, McKinsey seems to think that it's likely that this is going to happen between July and December, that we're going to achieve herd immunity. They think it's unlikely that it's going to happen in the first 2 quarters of 2021, but they also think that it's very unlikely that it's going to happen after the end of 2021. So most likely it should happen sometime between July and December of next year, and hopefully within the 3rd quarter. Some additional good news is that McKinsey predicts the mortality rates falling in either Q1 or Q2. So even before we achieve herd immunity, the mortality is going to go down. However, that means that the mortality might keep steady or even go up in the interim months before the end of Q1 or by Q2. According to these projections, we're still at least 7 months out from achieving herd immunity, but it does show that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. However, the rest of this article really does involve a lot of hedging, and they're saying that based on all of the unknown factors, there's still a lot that could go wrong that could delay this timeline. The first has to do with vaccines. Even though the results from the trials of the first 2 vaccines look quite promising so far, it's unclear if those high successful numbers will project out to the entire population once things get out into the real world. Part of the risk with vaccines is it's unclear who we're going to give them to right now. Obviously, we're going to focus on the highest risk people first and the people on the front lines. But right now, not a lot is known about how the vaccines perform in children, which are likely to carry a high viral load. So if we were to exclude children from receiving the vaccines and only give them to adults due to complications potentially, we might need a vaccination rate among adults of 60 to 85% to achieve herd immunity. Meanwhile, if we weren't going to restrict the vaccine to only adults, we might only need a 45 to 65% coverage rate, which is lower overall, in addition to being more widespread through the different age groups. And it also depends on how effective the vaccines are at reducing transmission. So the way I understand it is you could get vaccinated and likely not get sick yourself, but you could carry a viral load and you could still get other people sick. So if the vaccines are only 75% effective at reducing transmission, we would need a higher vaccination rate. And if they're only 50% effective at reducing transmission, we would need an even higher vaccination rate of around 90%. And it's not just going to depend on the vaccines, it's also going to depend on how many people are naturally infected and who develop a herd immunity. So places that are more urban may actually develop herd immunity faster because they have seen more people come in contact with the virus. However, this article does point out that there might be a higher threshold requirement for achieving herd immunity in more urban places. So all of that is still unknown and will still play out over the coming months. And one more thing that's going to affect the natural immunity rate and the need for vaccination is the duration for which we stay immune to the virus. So if it's only something like 6 months, we're going to have to require more people to get vaccinated. But if the memory is on the order of years or even longer, we won't need as many people to get vaccinated. And there are two things you might want to know about the logistics of the vaccines, at least for the Moderna and the Pfizer cases. The one is that both of those require you to get 2 doses. So if they're going to distribute 40 million doses this month, that actually means it's only going to go to about 20 million people. And the other thing is that these vaccines require very special storage. So they have to be stored at very cold temperatures. And this requires special freezers, it requires special trucks or containers that are able to stay cold long enough. So the whole thing is going to be very expensive, and there may end up being shortages depending on how fast things go out there and how well the production lines stay in operation. So as with everything we saw this year, things are going to continue to be tough for the next few months. But at least according to these projections, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. So with that said, I want to say thank you so much, and I hope you have a great day.